Hi, I'm Val and welcome to my channel. I wanted to talk to you today about a fabric book that I've made. It's not completely completed as yet, but nearly. And I wanted to show you how I made it because it's a really simple construction and it's quite a fun little challenge to set yourself. So this is my book and it's got a patchwork cover that is covered in beads and buttons and bits of embroidery. It's a bit of an upcycled sari. This is sari silk ribbon on either edge. We've got lots of little seed beads and little shisha mirror, and I've stitched into it a lot. It's just a really fun little thing to work on and good for whiling away the time. And I've just gone for a really mad mix of colours. There's no colour scheme here. I've just thrown everything into it. And the book, I thought about leaving these edges raw at the top and the bottom, and I put a stripy binding on it in the end. And added this button here. The book is a really simple, straightforward construction, and I just fancied one evening making a fabric book. And I think it took me about 10 minutes. It was that quick. And you can see when I open it up, I just used whatever thread was in the sewing machine, which turned out to be purple. So it was deliberately made to be quite scruffy and quite raggedy and have threads hanging off it. And then I sort of set myself a challenge of, well, I made this raggedy book, then how can I make it look good? How can I stop it looking like just something that should be headed for the rag bag? So if I open it up, I've patched on some more scraps of material here, added a bit of velvet ribbon, and you can see here where I've used just whatever thread was in the sewing machine to make it. And it's got pages in here that are made from either unbleached calico or white cotton, just whatever I had I could find. And the pages are different sizes as well. And I've just sewn in here various bits of slow stitching I've done when I've sort of got into the entire thing of slow stitching. I've made little things like this and not really knowing what to do with them, just enjoy the process of making them. And I've realised that in this fabric book I could add them in here, just stitch them in or make them into pockets, which is what I've done here. This is where I just made a little fabric flower. Just I got an embroidery hoop and stretched a piece of white cotton in it and then laid odd little scraps of material on there and then just embroidered a flower shape and added some beads, and that was just to see how that would turn out. So and then I cut the flower out and applicate it onto this page. This one I've added to the page this, which is part of a vintage tablecloth, because sometimes you do find them in charity shops and they've often got marks on them, or maybe a hole, a moth hole, or a cigarette burn, something like that. And you might as well cut them up and use them for other projects as just buy them and let them sit in a drawer and do nothing with them. So I've added things like these lazy daisies, these little flowers here, these dark pink flowers are ones I've added, seed stitching, blanket stitch. I put a bit of stripy binding on the edge there. This page I've sewn on this, which is, I was messing about with watercolour paints one day on paper, and then I had this odd little scrap of white cotton on the table, so I painted on it with watercolour paint and added some splashes as well. And that was just a little fun thing that I stuck into my book. This was a piece of embroidery. It's kind of loosely based on cow parsley. Just added a few beads for the frothy bits. Frothy, that's a difficult word to say. Little bits on the top of the cow parsley, and it's all in bloom and looking pretty. This is quite a simple page. I might add things to this. The book isn't entirely full yet. And this was cut from a large piece of material and appliqued on, and it's got lines of machine stitching. And this colour comes from acrylic paint, where acrylic paint has just literally just been painted onto unbleached calico. This is where I've stamped with an ink pad and a stamp onto this material. and little scraps are sewn on the edges, a little bit of kind of weaving with thread there, as though I was darning a hole. There's some tape measure there, fabric tape measure. This one I did just this little applique picture of, it's a stylised dragonfly with this lovely double gauze with these little gold hearts on it and a tiny bit of, oh gosh, I've just forgotten what the word is for that. It'll come back to me in a minute. Batik, that's it, batik fabric. There you go. Yep, and it's just stitched into, and some lazy daisies there, a bit of vintage embroidery. This is, that was from a scrap bag, and that came with the stitching already done on it. So I sewed it on there as a pocket. That was a bit of slow stitching I did. Just some kind of like grass and a stem and some leaves. You can see here, I might cover these up or I might just leave it as it is. This is the original stitching of the book with that purple thread that just happened to be in my sewing machine. This is some slow stitching I did, layering fabric, stitching sort of vertically, horizontally. That's part of an upcycled dress. Bought it from a charity shop and cut it up. That used to be a tablecloth. I think originally, no, pillowcase, that was it. Originally came from Accessorize. Lovely bit of tweed, I do love that. Would like to get some more of that. A little bit of slow stitching, and I'd use some alphabet little stamps to print the word faith on there. And the same word there, but spelled out in alphabet beads with some beaded trim on there. Some velvet. There's lots of stitching in that. I don't know whether you can see. Not so little, mainly white thread. Another bit of vintage cloth that's been made into a pocket, so I could add to that page and make something to put in that pocket. And this, again, this is acrylic paint on material. This page is, you can see the back of where that's been painted with acrylic, and this page is empty, so I've still got to complete that one. And this is the back inside cover where I've patched things on there, and that I might stitch into that and embroider into that a bit. So that's my book, my little fabric book. And how I made it, I've made a little sort of a blank one here. How I've made it is, let me turn to the centre and you can see I've cut out strips of material, and these are all 2 inches wide and the same length. And then you sew, either machine sew or you can hand sew pieces of material onto each side of your spine. And if I show you with this, let's get this out of the way. So if you were using, say, these pieces of material, there's more or less the same size, but they don't need to be. They can be, but they don't need to be. Then you'll just have your 2-inch spine, and then it is just a case of overlap it, stitch that down, overlap that, stitch that down. There you go. And you just do that several times, different pieces of fabric, and you get your pages for your signature. You can also do this with paper. So these are ones I've sewn where these are just sketchpad paper, and I've sewn these onto a fabric spine. So if you're making a journal, you can use the same method. You get a stack of these, and then you can sew them together down there, or you could have fabric pages as well and mix and match. So this, where did it go? Here it is. This is the little book I've made. So it's got the one piece of material for the cover, and then you get your stack of pages. Where is the middle? That's the middle. And then when you've got them, you just sew one seam down there, down the middle, and that's it. That's your book assembled. And then you just have to work out how you want to decorate your pages. And as you can see, I've put different kind of textures in here, different patterns. If I can turn the page, there we go. That's a bit of old napkin that I cut up. It's a nice bit of linen. And you can make the pages larger, you can sew extra sections on. You can do what you want with them, really. And when it comes to decorating your cover, if you use the same patchwork method that I used for this one, then it is just a case. I've got some scraps over here of getting your fabric scraps and just laying them on there. You can either leave the edges raw and embroider over them, or you can just turn them like that. There we go, and just keep patching them together. And I do think this sort of more is more look does look really good. And it is a good way to use lots of buttons and beads that you've got hanging around, because we all have them, and sometimes they get it gets so you've got so many you don't know what to do with. So it is a good way to use lots of them in this kind of project. And the more you layer up the patches, then the more substantial your cover gets. So you can start off with quite a flimsy cover, but by the time it's finished, it's got a lot more body to it. So I will carry on then with finishing this one, and I will start decorating this one. And at some point I shall come back and show you what I've done with this book. So I hope that made some kind of sense. If any of it wasn't clear, then just leave me a comment, and I'll try and explain myself a bit better. So thank you for watching, and I hope that was enjoyable, and maybe hopefully you'll stop by again soon. Okay, thanks very much. Bye bye.